Hi folks, before I start the video, is there anybody out there who is a lawyer who is involved in intellectual property issues or knows a lawyer who's involved in intellectual property issues? If you are, please contact me at the email address I'm showing on the screen below, bw@hardcorezen.info. Thank you very much. Now on to the video. Hello there folks. I had a whole other thing I wanted to talk about today, but over the past 24 hours, some stuff happened with my girlfriend that totally overwhelmed her at work. It was like crazy work stuff. And I spent a lot of time over the past day talking to her about my own strategies to deal with things that are overwhelming. And I thought maybe this might be useful to some of you folks out there who might be overwhelmed. I don't really know, I don't put too much stock in my own ability to help people with things like this. But there are three things that Nishijima Roshi told me at various times when I was overwhelmed with things, and they've all been really useful. They are, just follow circumstances, make things a little better, and there is no such thing as a result. Okay? So, just follow circumstances is one of his mantras. He said this all the time, and he would tell us that this was one of the main points of all of Buddhist philosophy, was just follow circumstances. And I often didn't understand it, and sometimes it was the language that was used, and sometimes it was the context, but I've seen other people say it in different ways, that there's not much you can do about the circumstances that you find yourself in as an individual. You can do something. And the circumstances that you find yourself in are not ultimately different from yourself. You and the circumstances that you find yourself in arise simultaneously out of the nothingness of the universe, and the best thing you can do is accord with the circumstances and not try to fight against it. Now, of course, there are things that you want to put right in the world, and there are things that happen to you that you can't simply just roll over and allow to happen. This is not an attitude of complacency. It's an attitude of flowing with whatever comes your way, rather than being complacent with it or trying to fight it. These would be the two extremes that would be the ones you'd want to avoid, because you and the circumstances come up together, as I said. So complacency would be like getting rid of the you and saying, well, it's just circumstances, I'm going to let them go. Fighting against it would be trying to fight against yourself, ultimately. And that's never going to work. So just follow circumstances was advice that Nishijima Roshi gave often, and that whenever I followed it, things worked out a little better. The other one, and I've mentioned this several times on this video channel, is you can make things a little better. For example, I got the trash guys out there. They usually come at around 5 or 6 in the morning. I don't know why they're coming now at 11 in the morning, but, who knows. Anyway, you can make things a little better. I can speak a little louder and try to make my voice heard over the noise of the trash guys up there. Things like that. This came up for me when I was working for Tsuburaya Productions, and circumstances were just overwhelming, and the company was falling apart. It was really not just falling apart, but ripping itself apart, because it was a family company, and the family members were all jockeying for position, and fighting with each other, and it wasn't working out for anybody, but they wouldn't stop it. And I could see all this happening, and here I am, just a small part of the company. I'd been there a long time, but I'm a foreigner, and people treat foreigners differently in Japan, and nobody was really listening to me. And I spilled my guts out to Nishijima Roshi about all this, and he said, you can make things a little better. And I took that to heart. I didn't try to solve the big problems. Solving the big problems, you're just not going to do it. The big world problems, or the big problems at your workplace, or any of these big problems, we just can't do that. Even if you're in a position of power and authority, you often you find yourself very powerless to do much about those big problems. One of the things I often tell people who are having trouble like this is, forget about the big picture. It's it's really tempting to try to figure out the big picture and try to sort of project into the future and figure out what's going to happen in the, the grand scheme of things and all that. But whenever I've tried that, it just hasn't worked out very well. I'm not smart enough to figure out the big picture, and I don't have enough information to figure out the big picture. And even if I had all the information and all the smarts, the getting everyone to listen to me and follow what I think should be done, and how do I know that even what I think should be done is the right thing? That's the second bit of advice. The third one came from this book, which is a book I don't talk about very often, but it's one of the Zen books I have worked on, and it was a translation of Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika that Nishijima Roshi had worked on, and then he asked me to fix up, and there's a whole long story behind how that happened. And people were incredibly mean in the reviews when this came out. And I don't mean that in just terms of people being critical. I mean, you can be critical if you want, that's fine. But the criticism aimed at this book was mean-spirited, angry, and really... what's it called when you point at the person instead of the work? It was really nasty stuff came out of it, especially amongst certain people who used to claim to be my friends, and sometimes still claim to be my friends when they think they can make points out of it for their own careers. You know who I'm talking about if you're watching. Anyway, so this was a book that had a lot of problems for me. However, one of the great things that this book contains within its many, many pages is a long sort of aside, which I think, I haven't read the book in years, but I think it travels through several different chapters of the book. It kind of disappears and comes back and disappears and comes back. And it's all about the idea that there is no such thing as a result. We think that there's cause and effect, but Nishijima Roshi kind of argues in this book that there's only cause, and effect is something we create in our minds. It's very interesting stuff, and I had a hell of a time trying to figure out the right words to express his idea. But the thing is, when you're looking at the results of a thing, you're going to get lost because you don't know the results, and everything has so many causes and so many factors that go into it. It's impossible to say that this is the result of that. Even a simple thing like striking a match results in a flame on top of the match. If you start examining something like that closely, you'll find that, oh my God, there's so many factors that go into that you can't even say that striking the match results in the flame. Something as simple as that. So don't worry about the results. Just worry about what you do now. And this brings to mind a story which I had forgotten, and then I just went on Facebook and said, does anybody remember this story? And within 5 minutes somebody had come up with the story, and I'm just going to read it to you, and my eye line is going to go wonky because I'm going to be looking at the story instead of the screen. But anyway, it's a Taoist story that's often used by Zen people. And it says, there's an old farmer who worked on his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said sympathetically. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. How wonderful, the neighbors exclaimed. Maybe, replied the old man. The following day his son tried to ride one of the untamed horses, was thrown and broke his legs. The neighbors again came to offer their sympathy for what they called his misfortune. Maybe, the farmer said. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing that the son's leg was broken, they passed him by. The neighbors congratulated the farmer on how well things had turned out. Maybe, said the farmer. And that's where that version of the story ends, but you can see how it's going to go. So when you are fixated on what's a success and what's a failure, the thing is you don't know. You really don't know how things are going to turn out in the end. And so often things in my life that seemed like tremendous failures turned out to be great successes. And the one I always like to tell when I tell this story, so forgive me if you've heard it before, is that my moving to Japan was a result of just feeling like an abject failure at everything I'd done. I released 5 albums by Dementia 13 on an indie label and thought I was on my way to having a career as a rock musician, and singer-songwriter, guitarist, and all that, and the records never sold enough copies to make a living on. And I had meanwhile been getting a degree in history and a teaching certificate, and I went out and applied to a bunch of teaching positions that were open at the time, and got turned down for every one of them because I couldn't coach football or baseball or something like that. It turns out in Ohio, at least in those days, they didn't hire history teachers. They hire coaches who they put in the position of history teachers, which is why teaching of history sucks so bad. So as a kind of last-ditch effort to get my life together or something, I applied for this job in Japan, teaching English, and that led to everything that's been good in my life so far, including this video series you're watching right now, and my books, and the whole bit. So you don't know what's a success and what's a failure, and that's also important. So the thing is, when you're overwhelmed, maybe these 3 pieces of advice might help you. I don't know if they'll help you or not, but they've helped me over time to always sort of reflect on that. And so there you go. The other thing I wanted to mention is I had my teeth worked on, and that makes me want to ask for donations from you, because I'll tell you what, I shouldn't put my PayPal and Patreon links in here. I should put my dentist's Patreon and PayPal links, or if he has Patreon, I don't know, but his PayPal links or something, because all the money you're sending me and have sent me for the past few months has gone to my dentist. So I really appreciate you supporting me, and the reason I could pay for the dentist is that you guys have been supporting me all this time. If you're having financial trouble, don't worry about me, because at least I can pay for the dentist, and if you're not able to pay for the dentist, don't contribute to me. But those of you who have been contributing to me have helped me pay for my huge dental bills, and finally this tooth seems to be okay. Let's hope. Maybe it'll end up like that farmer story. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, have a good time all the time. See you later. Bye.